Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Yeah, not so bad, not so bad.
Beautiful morning. It's snowing here.
Nice.
Wow,
Yes.
it's windy and dry here.
Yeah. Beautiful, sunny Saturday morning here in San Francisco.
Mala, did you want to start off?
I can do, yeah. Well, we've hit the hour, so we'll make a start. Okay, so welcome everybody. Actually, we've got quite a few in, so that's good. We're joined today by Thomas Mattimore, Head of Platform at Reserve. And the point of this was just to have a quick catch-up post-mainnet, really, catch up on a few bits and pieces. It's not deemed to be like a super long talk, but we'll just see how it goes. The elephant in the room, obviously, is FTX. Now, our thoughts go out to everybody who's been affected by this. It's an absolute catastrophe. We might get into it later on, but we'll go through the reserve stuff first. So, first up, Thomas, well, congratulations. I haven't had a chance to officially say well done on mainnet launch, which went smoothly. And the first question we've got is, you started a hackathon a few weeks back in coordination with GitHub to incentivize plugins for the protocol to make our tokens more flexible. Someone gave us an update during the week on Twitter, and we're just keen to hear your take on things so far.
Yeah, well, so first of all, in the protocol launch, congratulations. Huge kudos to I still can't believe that everything just worked perfectly on stage. There's there's a lot of whenever I told folks that we were actually going to launch on stage, people were everyone was like, "Really?" It's traditionally a pretty risky thing to do like live demos like that, and everything worked flawlessly. That we hit the buttons, deployed the protocol, and then Sinatra, who I can see here now, was able to do a live demo an hour later, and deploy a test token, do minting and redeeming, the whole thing, and it was really awesome. So yeah, just quickly on that. But on Gitcoin, it's been really exciting. Just a bit of context for everyone. When we launched the protocol, it had plugins for Aave and Compound. But what we really think is going to make it possible to build future reserve currencies and make it so that it's possible to actually fight inflation with yields across the DeFi landscape. A big piece of it is going to be having flexibility in the collateral basket and having flexibility to incorporate new types of collateral being deployed in different types of ways throughout the DeFi landscape to get different types of yields. And so, a big focus of the hackathon was to expand a big focus of the Gitcoin hackathon is to expand the toolkit for deployers and governors as they're choosing which types of things should be in an token. Another big focus on the Gitcoin side. We've well, first of all, finishing up on the collaterals. On the collateral plugins, it's been great to see. I think we had about 20 collateral plugins that we prioritized for the hackathon, and we prioritized them based on different, the TVL, the safety, usefulness, etc. All of the ones that we had as a top priority, there's been work started on all of those. Most of the ones in the medium category and a few in the lower category. We're super excited to have those things in the toolkit. The other thing that we have as a part of the hackathon is actually a best new addition to the reserve ecosystem bounty, which is pretty interesting. and we've actually gotten a bit less engagement on this one than we were expecting. And I was talking to the team about this yesterday, and we think it's because we were almost a bit too open-ended on it. We kind of broke down a couple different examples. One is it's possible to create a new product on the platform, and the other was to create a new tool for the ecosystem, and gave a bunch of examples. But it's actually been it's funny, one thing that we were talking about yesterday that we want to clarify is if folks have an idea for a R token, and think about an R token as like a product that can be launched on this platform and brought to the world, and it has different types of yield generation, and the yield can fund different things, whether it's the insurance pool or the R token holders, or the company or group that launches it, or charities, or like ESG, or like whatever it is. What is that new R token that people have in their head that they want to see in the world? And what do they think? How should it be branded? How should it all work? What should the collateral basket look like, etc. And yes, we're really excited to. We're going to be pushing on that a bit harder over the next couple of weeks to try to get some more folks involved.
Okay, cool. And are there any particular plugins that you're excited to see?
Yeah, I think. So I'm super excited to see Convex and Convex pools on there with Curve LP tokens, also Uniswap pools. I think Euler's a really interesting protocol. It's very similar to Aave and Compound, but it's a permissionless platform that allows anyone to launch things as long as there's a minimum amount of liquidity on Uniswap. Those are like some of the big ones that I'm excited about, but I'm also excited about some of the other. I think there's a whole category of DeFi which I think will be a really interesting part of the next bull cycle, which is corporate lending essentially. If you look at I don't know if folks remember Tom Courier's presentation from our launch event, but he talked a lot about how do people store their wealth, and what might a long-term portfolio look like to store, preserve, and create wealth over the long term. And a big portion of that basket is bonds, right? And if you think about what protocols like Maple or Goldfinch or Clearpool are, they're really just corporate bonds. It's loans to businesses that are paid back with interest, and you don't necessarily have to over collateralize them. I think there's still challenges of figuring out how do you underwrite that, and how do you figure out the risk of that, and make sure that folks aren't taking out loans in multiple spots, et cetera, et cetera. For instance, I think a couple of those were actually had loans out to Alameda this week, which will be interesting to see what happens there. But oftentimes when a company has cash flow, it's you can get a loan that's based on the cash flow that the company is generating, and you make sure that they can pay off that loan over time, et cetera. But that's actually a huge segment of wealth that is stored in the world, is people owning these corporate bonds, these loans to companies that get paid off over time with a fairly reliable interest rate. And that's something I'm really interested to see get incorporated, because typically those are slightly higher risks than they're definitely higher risks than an over collateralized essentially margin loan, which is what Aave and Compound and Maker are. But they typically pay higher yields as a result, and businesses can afford to do that because sorry, I was getting a phone call. Businesses can afford to do that because they have the cash flow, and it's worth it to them in order to grow. They need to get the loan in order to hire people, or to pay for marketing, or whatever it is, and there's typically a clear payoff period for them, or ROI for them to get that loan and actually spend that money.
Mm-hmm. So it needs something along the lines of some credit scoring system, business wise, that you can plug into in DeFi. which can prove, you haven't taken out multiple loans and et cetera, et cetera. You have some kind of payment history.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's tricky about it in DeFi, right? Is like, how do you actually verify that and make sure that those loans aren't happening in multiple places and et cetera. I think so. Maple partners with like a couple different underwriting agencies, and there's an interesting way that they do the capital structure so that like the first people that take the pain of any defaults are like borne by the people that do the underwriting, I believe. Although don't on that, and like different spots are testing out different models. So it'll be interesting to see how those work and how those grow.
Yeah, cool. We're going to do the standard ping pong system here. So I ask a question, then I hand it over to Braden.
Hey, so before we go to the next one, can you go into more depth on the best addition to the reserve system bounty? Um, I mean, I thought that was pretty important. And I guess, like, do you have more to add to that? What that bounty, I mean, like, means to you guys, and the interest you guys have seen so far?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. It's something we're excited about. I think one thing that we found, when we shared earlier this year that we wouldn't be deploying any R tokens, was that it sparked a ton of creativity. And it really got the creative juices flowing in the Discord and in the R token brainstorm channel on like what are the different things that could be built, and what are the different things that like how could these work, and what kind of products could be supported, et cetera, et cetera. And like who might be the stakeholders, like the whole thing. And that was really exciting to us. And that was a big part of what inspired this new edition bounty, which is just the nuts and bolts here. It's a $100,000 prize. There's going to be a first, second, and third place. So the first place will get 50,000, second 30,000, third place 20,000. And we left it pretty broad because we wanted to see like what people can create here and what kind of ideas people come up with. And we gave like two big buckets of examples. One is to create a product on the platform, and we really had our tokens in mind. The like what are different types of art tokens that people want to see in the world, and like put together a bit business plan, and like figure out how it would be branded, and what would the collateral basket be, and how would the yield that's generated by the collateral flow through the system, like who would it fund, et cetera, like put together like a mini business plan. And then the other thing is like the other bucket was like a new tool, right? And we realized this is a bit vague, and so I was talking yesterday with James and Sinatra and Smetty and Soham about like how can we give some more illustrative examples to get the creative juices flowing on this one. And so we'll be releasing some some examples and hopefully some thoughts on what people could do here. But we're really excited to see what kind of things people can build. And like I'm surprised to not have seen a variety of different high yield R tokens submitted as ideas. We actually there's only been 3 ideas so far, 3 submissions so far, and so this is something that we're going to be leaning into to make sure that folks are aware of it, and make sure that folks are getting involved in submitting ideas. We're really excited to see what folks.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think that's good. I was reading it and I thought it was a bit vague myself. But I think that's good. I think people might be thinking of things that they haven't voiced to you guys yet, and sometimes people are quiet about it, but I hope so. But anyways, going into MobileCoin.
Yeah.
So they're their first R token players. Are you guys still in discussion with them? I'm sure yes. But how's that going? And then they just had a launch party for their app last week, I believe. What can you say about that?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, things are going really well with MobileCoin. They've been great partners, and we're excited to continue working with them. We're in a bunch of shared messaging channels with them, and I meet with their team every week or so. And yeah, they continue to be focused on and off ramps for EUSD. Make it as easy as possible for folks to get access to the ecosystem and make it so that they can onboard USD onto their apps and send it around and use it. And on our side, we continue to be focused on really getting to the all clear milestone so that more significant capital can flow into the USDR token. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I continue to be very excited about the opportunity for like private transactable stablecoins with super low fees where you don't have to worry about gas costs, and it's just like a Venmo type experience that's decentralized. And I just think it's like such a really, really cool thing that I'm personally excited to use more. And yeah, so things continue to go really well there.
Yeah,
That's,
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, right.
yeah, I mean, it's like I think like having custody of your funds within the mobile the like Mobi app, I think is pretty cool. It's not like really possible, I guess, like within the United States. But if there was like some app in some other country that was regulated, maybe like the Bahamas or whatever, like we saw with FTX, where it was a payment app, like Venmo, Cash App, etc. And they had done some weird things with their money, and then a whole bunch of people lost their funds just because it wasn't, kind of like self custody, I guess. I think that would be kind of crazy. So the the Mobi app, I think, will be cool.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
it's profound.
It's exactly right. And I know we said we'd wait on FTX till later, but there's
Sorry.
no, it's good. And I think that this week has been like a really interesting, really interesting week. Obviously, super sad, but and it's going to be there's lots of contagion. I'm hopeful that more dominoes don't fall. But some of the things that I think we're just, I thought we were over this. Having watched it for the last 8 or 9 years, but not your keys, not your crypto, like really became the name of the game again. And the transparency that comes along with DeFi and with blockchains in general just became that the importance of it became that much more obvious. And an interesting thing about Venmo, for instance, is that they make money with the float from balances that are left on the app, right? And it's run by PayPal, which is like a super heavily regulated company, and everyone trusts that they're doing safe things with that balance. But it's trust, right? And I think the biggest thing about crypto and about DeFi is that you don't actually want to have to trust. You want to be able to prove that things are done in the right way, transparently. And what's interesting about USD on MobileCoin is that that's actually the case, right? Like you can go, like you have custody of the keys. No one can, no one can lock your account and make it so you can't send that money. You can go and look at the R token and see what it's backed by and see exactly what's generating the yield that helps keep the company afloat that's running it. You can see where those funds are deployed, which DeFi protocols, right? Like the current plan, I believe, is Aave and Compound with USDC and the Pax dollar and True USD. And, like those, exactly where those funds are held, how they're being lent out, where they're being lent out. That they're over collateralized loans, and that the companies that are holding the dollars in bank accounts are audited and transparent about those audits. And so it's just like a fundamentally different thing that would have solved everything that happened this week. And that's been like one of the saddest things to see is that like crypto literally solves the issue that happened this week with the transparency and the self-custody. And it's just been really, I think, devastating for everyone to see it blow up at such a scale.
Yeah,
I agree. Well said.
Blow up it has, but certainly well said. And the silver lining, if there is any, is that the solution is already here. It's not like we have to wait for something to get built. It's already here. So,
Yeah.
Now it's a choice, and hopefully it's a fairly simple choice.
I think that's right. And, I will fully agree with that with a caveat. The UX still sucks.
So here's, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So we all know people that, they're less tech savvy. And so it's like, okay, the FTX thing happens. And then you say, guys, you got to make sure that you have your funds off the exchange. And they're like, how? It's like, it's obvious that the solution is, to try to erode this friction that exists. And I think everybody's working pretty hard, but whatever it is, it has to be like, 10 or 100 times better than it is right now for the self-custody solution. So,
Yeah, exactly right.
People just can't figure it out. Like they have too much mental energy has to be put into it.
That's exactly right. And it's fun to see people experimenting with different things. Like one of the big reasons that Solana is launching a phone is because it allows them to have a secure enclave on the phone to store the keys that isn't accessible to anything else, and makes it so that people don't have to worry about like a separate hardware wallet. Right? And that's like a cool, interesting thing to explore on the UX side. Like, how do we make it easy for people to self-custody? I think the other thing that's worth saying as well is like, why did people like FTX? The trading interface was clean. They had a great mobile app, and like it was just like a good UX, right? I think everyone's got complaints about different UXs and which buttons they don't like, and things like that. But at the end of the day, that was also like a big reason that people liked it. That and the access to different types of financial products like perps and derivatives and tokenized stocks and things of that nature. But that's like a big thing that DeFi really has to fix. There needs to be more effort focused on UX and making it clean user experiences and making it easy for people to interact with these things and not worry about losing their money.
Totally agree. Yeah, and that will come. I think once the product market fit is found and it's got a strong case, then the UX will come straight after that. I think it's kind of chicken and egg at the moment, isn't it?
It is a bit, because like product market fit comes from good UX oftentimes, and it is definitely chicken and egg. And so I'm excited to see folks really. I was doing some end of the week rambling on Twitter yesterday, but I'm really excited to see folks focus on usage and solving problems for people, and really focusing on those problems and measuring how good those problems are being solved in a variety of different ways. Like, there's no one in crypto outside of the centralized exchanges that have millions of daily active users. Like, that's like crazy in the tech world, right? like if you look at any of the big tech companies, they're in the billions of daily active users, and no one in crypto is even close. People's eyes light up when they hear the Reserve app's user counts, because they're just so much higher than what they're used to hearing in crypto, right? And it's awesome and it's amazing, but it's still nowhere close to typical tech adoption numbers. And so I'm really excited to see over the next couple of years, like, what is going to be the app that actually gets crazy adoption numbers and actually gets to the like typical tech adoption numbers in the millions and the billions, because that is, at the end of the day, what is going to be the prover of product market fit.
Part of me thinks that once it gets founded, let's just say an R token gets a good market cap, and it's because of an app. Let's just say it's mobile coin.
Sure.
Part of me thinks that that will be kind of the gateway to, let's just call it, normal app players. For the sake of argument, Signal they have a relationship with MobileCoin. Now, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Elon thinks that payment over Twitter is a good idea, and his normal go-to way of doing it would be through Visa or somebody with banking rails. But then he thinks, do you know what? This permissionless thing looks quite good. I think I'd prefer to do it that way. And then all of a sudden, something where a major player just builds an add-on doesn't necessarily have to be the app which communicates in crypto. It's just another side to a business, ultimately, which people go into and say, okay, if I want to do permissionless cross-border transfers at incredibly low cost, there's my option.
That's exactly right. And there was actually a bit of a surreal Twitter space last night that was about the FTX hack that was ongoing over the last night. And Elon jumped in. And, I think as a joke, he started off by saying Doge to the moon. But then, he was talking a bit about how in the future he is exploring different ways to integrate payments into crypto or payments into Twitter, and that crypto is a likely path because of the decentralized nature of it. And I'm summarizing and don't want to imply that I have any inside scoop into Elon besides what I heard him say a couple sentences on a Twitter space last night. But it does seem, like it's on their radar, even though they've got bigger fish to fry at the moment. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Just to come back quickly to the all clear you mentioned earlier in connection with MobileCoin, is I think Smeddy mentioned that would be it's an ambition to get that done this year. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it is. Still feeling good about end of year. Team's working through some final details and testing. One of the things to do is set up robust off-chain keepers, which if folks are familiar with how Ethereum works, you can't really automatically trigger things. And so someone actually needs to start a transaction and start a function being called and, pay the gas. Right. And so how protocols do that is they have, the blockchain handles all of the security aspects and the rules of how things can work. And then, you typically build one or many people build off-chain keepers, which are things that will then go trigger transactions and pay the gas. And so, we'll be doing this in the beginning, other DeFi, with other DeFi protocols, though, there's a bunch of different folks that can do this, and anyone can go do it actually via Etherscan. Oftentimes, which is move the thing along, right? And it's claim the revenue or rebalance the thing, or in our world, those are some of the things that they would be. But we want to make sure that we've got those set up so that it's easy to move the protocol through the various steps. And so that that's another bucket of things that we're going to nail down here. We're still feeling good about end of year.
Oh, super cool. I've managed to get myself entangled in a dinner date, which is in 15 minutes' time. So I'm going to have to hop off, I'm afraid. But I shall leave you in Braden's capable hands. Thanks very much for listening. I'll speak to you all later. Goodbye from me.
Enjoy dinner. See you, Marlo.
Later, Marlo. Hey, so with regards to the all clear and the safe deployment of our tokens, is there much interest from other people and companies to deploy our tokens that you can talk about?
Yeah, there's been a variety of different folks that are interested. I think, from a lot of DeFi natives, also actually from some major DeFi protocols, which I won't mention by name yet. But what's really interesting about our tokens is it allows easy passive access to yields in the DeFi world, accessible via a simple token, right? And so what does that really mean? It means for a protocol, if your DeFi primitive is included in the collateral basket, the R token collateral, which is in that protocol, is going to be really sticky, right? It's probably not going to move around a lot. It's just going to sit there and just passively be a participant, almost like in the same way that like uh, the shareholders of companies that are being held through an ETF aren't really like active participants in that company's governance, right? That it just kind of like sits there and has access to the value appreciation, et cetera, or the dividends, whatever it is. Like in the R token world, the liquidity backing up a R token will just really be sitting there and cleaning the yields, et cetera. There's a there was actually, and then the other side of it is there was a tweet a couple months ago from VP of product at Coinbase. His name's Max Brandsburg, I think. But he was asking a question like, why aren't people in Latin America using L2 DeFi yields to fight inflation in their countries? And I think the answer is really like, it's a pain in the ass. And you kind of have to like love DeFi yield farming to do it. Like operationally, folks here have done it. It's you have to like log in and check on your position and monitor the position and claim the tokens and compound this, go sell those tokens and compound them and like the whole thing, right? It's like there's a lot of things you have to like log in and hit a bunch of buttons kind of frequently, right? And really have to know about what's going on. Like if you think about folks in your lives, a lot of people like they don't like thinking about investing in stocks. They're like it's like something that's like confusing or scary or like whatever it is, whatever the reasons are. It's like not something that like every person loves to do. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that there hasn't been a big push or a huge wave of adoption in L2 DeFi yields by like normal everyday folks that don't like think about this stuff all the time. And so what's really interesting about our tokens is it kind of like wraps that all up into a single spot and makes it accessible in a really easy way to folks wherever they may be storing or buying crypto. It's like a single, like a high yield R token, or yield bearing R token, however high that yield is, obviously based on whatever the yields in the DeFi world are, is like a really interesting product for folks that aren't really into crypto and just want access to yield. And I think that is like a fundamental thing that people do want access to. I think whether it's people jumping around different bank accounts in the US from like Ally to SoFi to wherever it is to get the highest yield on their savings account. Or what drove a lot of the carnage in the last 6 months in crypto. People were chasing yields in BlockFi and FTX. FTX, like a huge thing that people loved there was you could stake your Bitcoin for like 4 or 5% interest. And obviously we saw where that went, and the companies had to go chase that yield in a non-transparent way to really juice them up. But at the end of the day, like I think that people really want yield on their money, and this is like it's an easier way to do it than DeFi. It's a safer way to do it than CeFi. So we're in our conversations with deployers, just to bring this back around. I think folks are starting to get that it's a really interesting way to give people that might not have been interested in providing liquidity in their ecosystem access to provide liquidity in their ecosystem, and it then becomes really sticky TVL and liquidity in their ecosystem. And so it's an interesting way to like expand the user base of folks that are participating.
That's really interesting. So I'm kind of going to steal from like another question with regards
Yeah.
to this one. Okay, so you make an R token, and it's like, how do you like get that into the market? Like if you're a smaller player, like the mechanics of it to me are like, well, you need tens of thousands of dollars potentially of your R token minted and in like various different pools perhaps on Uniswap, in order for people to even get it, because a lot of people aren't going to buy all the different collateral types and then mint it themselves. And
Yeah.
so how does Curve and Convex play into this like liquidity bootstrapping for these
Yeah.
people that are deploying our tokens at the beginning?
Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna pull together a couple things here in the answer. So you're exactly right. You do need a bit of capital to get off to really get something off the ground, right? And it's actually, bringing it back to Gitcoin, one of the reasons that we made that the biggest prize pool, because we want folks that win that and might maybe deploying an R token to have some initial capital to get off the ground. Um, the other, uh, that being said, I think that if these things are interesting, like if we think that it's like an interesting, safe thing, we also might help provide liquidity to some of our tokens that get created. Um, and use some treasury funds to get our interesting our tokens off the ground, and to go minted and help set up pools. The other on the curve side, the way that it really works is that it incentivizes liquidity. And so it makes it so that there's like a high reward API rate on particular liquidity pools. And as a result, those people are incentivized, economically to go get that thing in the lowest fee way possible, whether it's minting it themselves or buying it on the open market and depositing in the liquidity pool to get access to those yields. And so it is like a very pure economic incentive for folks to go do that. And so when we're using our voting power to move the fire hose of CRV, excuse me, the fire hose of CRV tokens directed towards the liquidity pools for reserve tokens, or reserve R tokens rather, then we'll be helping those R tokens have higher APY, which will incentivize folks to go mint them or buy them and put them into the pool.
I think that's very interesting, and it's the mechanics are pretty deep. So it's pretty, even for somebody that likes to learn more about the technical things, I think it is quite technical. So, but it's cool. Um, so I will jump to another question here.
Well,
Um,
Braden, you mind if I take like 2 seconds to try to do the TLDR on how it all works?
yeah, no, yeah, I would love that. Thank you.
Um, so it is kind of technical, but if you think about it from a very high level, the way that it works is that there are liquidity pools on Curve, and every week Curve emits a set amount of CRV tokens. The Curve governance determines which pools get access to those CRV rewards that are emitted every week. And there's a variety of different ways to direct that governance power, which I won't really go into because I think that's where people get confused and it gets a little convoluted. But at the end of the day, what Reserve did is we acquired a stake in voting power in the Curve DAO, and we will be voting on Reserve ecosystem liquidity pools. And so that means that any pools that have R tokens will have will be voted on so that the CRV rewards are sent to those pools. Therefore, the rewards APY for those pools will be higher because it'll have 2% of Curve's voting power directed at them, and so as a result, people will want to get access to those yields and will need to go buy or mint the R tokens to deposit them there. I think that's like the shortest version. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and so I think the term that is going to come up that like most people don't understand how this works, and I think the word usually has like negative connotations, and so like
Sure.
with bribes, can you explain
Yeah.
what that is like and why that exists?
Yeah. It does have a lot of negative connotations. I typically use the word incentives to voters, but the it's pretty basic, right? There's voting power that directs where the CRV rewards go every week, which pools get them. And so there's a lot of voters that don't really care and just want to maximize their yield. And so a couple different platforms have created mechanisms to make it so that you can pay the voters, you can incentivize the voters in the Curve ecosystem to vote a certain way so that your liquidity pool is higher. We actually did the math on this, and we think that it's like more economically, it's a higher ROI to just buy the voting power as opposed to renting the voting power. And that, like, incentivizing the voters is kind of like a rental short-term thing where you're paying the voters for 1 week of votes, but you have to then pay them every week, right? Whereas if you just buy the voting power, you can vote your way every week, and so that's kind of like the different dynamics there, and that's where it gets interesting and confusing, and whether convex comes into play and Vodium and all those different things. But if you look back at the last year, you can see like there's a variety of different protocols that bought and incentivized voters to vote in certain ways so that the liquidity in their pools are higher.
That I think it's pretty cool that this exists. Um, just like at all, it's like the crypto ecosystem is like so many layers deep. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of interesting. It's so this whole ecosystem is really fun for me because I think it's like very different uh, from normal finance, right? Because in normal finance, there's like market makers that make the markets for stocks and currencies and whatever it is, and it kind of happens in like a very opaque way. But if you think about it, like it's happening it's happening opaquely, but it's like kind of similar, right? Like someone's paying them to go market make these things, or they're making money by doing like high frequency trading to like get a cent here and a cent there over and over and over again, millions of times. And the what's cool about it on the DeFi side is that AMMs are just like a new invention, right? I think like the biggest DeFi invention is probably the AMM, like the automated market making mechanism for decentralized exchanges for DEXs. And as a result, there's like kind of like a new thing that had to be built on top of it that ended up kind of getting to the same thing that is just, but it's like transparent and just like straightforward in how it operates, right? And like the word bribe is kind of thrown around. But you're paying people in order to incentivize your liquidity pools, in order to get more liquidity providers, so that there's deeper liquidity. There's more market making happening. There's more automated market making happening rather on the DEX where your thing is trading. And so it's like kind of the same thing, but it's just like flipped on its head. And like this new invention and ecosystem on top of it. So it's like it's a thing that really fascinates me, and I find quite interesting to explore, just because it's, I think, like really one of the fundamentally new things in DeFi.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something that I think I need to explore more myself. Thank you for your explanation. I'll probably listen to
Yeah,
that a few different times to try to get it, and then do some exploring on my own.
sure.
So I don't really have any more questions, but there are a good amount of people listening right now, and I think since this has been our first interview since mainnet, like everybody, if you guys have any questions about anything, relevant, raise your hand. Would love to bring some people up and ask some questions. Now would be a good time if that is okay with you, Thomas.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Oh, do you know how to do this in Discord?
Yeah, there's a little tab and it's like request to speak, and so nobody has requested right now. But I will say in the interim, thank you very much to Sinatra for setting up the uh, stage. It was very nice of you. So
He's a Discord star.
Yeah. I really like the Discord. It's clean. A lot of thinking has been done to make this, I think. So
All the credit to Sinatra and Smetty on that one. I'm always asking them to add new channels. They're like, I think we gotta like hold back and make sure we keep it clean. They're very diligent on ensuring that it's an easy spot to navigate. Yeah, happy to answer questions about anything though, whether it's like reserve, DeFi generally, thoughts on what happened this week. I'm very happy to talk about anything here.
we're oh, we've got Boogie or Bougie. Sorry.
Bougie.
Yeah, or
Bougie.
bougie, either way. So it's been a little while since I've checked in on things. I was curious about if you guys are still considering or continuously look at like other EVM compatible layer ones or anything else that's more scalable or less gas fees than the Ethereum mainnet.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see. So a couple things there. One, which is just a part of the answer, we don't actually have any plans to deploy the protocol itself anywhere else. But big caveat, we do intend to help our tokens get bridged to different places so that users can access them with lower fees, et cetera. And so there's actually already been, our MobileCoin partnership is bridging an R token to a different L1 that has lower fees and different properties like privacy, so that you can use these R tokens and basically give them new features. Right, it's a quarter of a cent to transact there, and it's fully private, so that no one knows who you're sending money to or where you're sending it, etc. And we expect that will be like a typical pattern where the R token is deployed on Ethereum mainnet, and then the R token itself is bridged to different networks that have lower fees, etc. And the reasoning behind that is that we just fundamentally think that Ethereum is like the most secure blockchain right now. With the it also has the deepest liquidity by far of any blockchain. If you look at the TVL on DeFi Llama of Ethereum versus everything else, I think I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but I think it's like 60% of TVL in DeFi is on ETH. And so that's like a really important aspect of the protocol to be able to function properly. And so that's one of the big things that goes into it. So security and deep liquidity on mainnet will allow the protocol to function, but the R tokens themselves can and should be bridged and already have been bridged to different places.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for coming up, Bougie.
Yeah, thank you. One thing I was thinking about was like okay, so we obviously know the whole thing with FTX happened, but if we go back to with that in mind, if we go back to Tom's presentation um, on the 11th, I think it was, of October, the mainnet day.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so if we go back to that, one of the things he talked about was taking, like a family that owned, like $1 billion in real estate, etc. And basically putting that on chain, that whole thing, putting it on chain. What happens if, like there is some sort of misalignment of the true value of like what they have, um, and then they like put it into R tokens, the default from that collateral. But I guess like what I'm concerned about is we have like in 2008 we obviously had mortgages that were rated wrong, and that kind of became a huge problem. What do you like? How do you see like avoiding that type of problem of like bad bad value, not true value, being put into our tokens? In that type of an example Tom gave.
Yeah, it's a good one, and I talked about this a bit earlier, but this is one of the things that I do think that DeFi does a great job at exposing. I think this past week we saw the Twitter on-chain DeFi sleuths that went and found, and really tracked down that there just weren't that many funds in the FTX wallets. And I expect that is only going to continue. There's a subset of folks that really love digging through this stuff and making sure that it's really safe. And we'll be relying on the governance community and the reserve community, and we'll be hoping to participate in that for sure. But over time, the goal is that the transparent nature of governance will make it so that people are really digging into what these things are. And if you go look at, we're a good example of like this already happening is if you go look at like the crazy intense, in-depth, technical, financial discussions that are happening in the MakerDAO forum. Like people are coming in from all kinds of places and just posting these like really interesting and intensely technical posts in their discussion forums about like how is the treasury held and what kind of assets are they held in and like why are those good or bad and things of that nature. And at the end of the day, like there's tons of different incentives for different constituents in that group, but it all happens in public. And that's a big goal for us as well, is that people will there will be an active participation rate in the governance forums for our tokens, so that people are really trying to understand like where are these funds held, what are they held in, are they in safe assets, or are they not? And when that all else fails, the other big thing is that we have the staked RSR backup insurance mechanism, right? And so when there are mistakes, the decision makers on where the collateral is held, the governors of the R token, the staked RSR holders, will be the ones that are the first capital at risk in that case. And so the R token holders will have some kind of backstop depending on whatever the insurance ratio is to the R token market cap, but that will help eliminate some of the issues there. And if one say 10% of an R token goes under and 20% of it, 20% of the R token is insured, then R token holders will be protected in that case. And the folks that made the decision will be the ones that take the first hit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I was trying to think of like hmm. Well, first I'll say, if anybody has any questions for Thomas, please raise your hand. We'd love to bring you up here. But okay, so like, what would happen if like that? So if there is like a mathematical way to like bribe people to promote your R token that you've like put $1 billion worth of your real estate that you own sort of thing, but it's like you can spend. I don't know how to say this. It's like I feel like you could all of a sudden push for your collateral to be included in things, and effectively make people adopt your thing, by making it seem like it's good, etc. And then you can basically like extract value from these people that are using that R token, maybe, um,
Yep.
by like you could short it. I don't know.
Yeah. So, right, so you're really what you're getting to is like governance attacks, right?
Yeah.
And we did a lot of gaming around this to design the Governor Alexios to make sure that there's safeguards in place to prevent that from happening. And like the most obvious instance of that being an issue is in the case of an R token with a smaller market cap, where someone can go stake a smaller amount of RSR there and have an outsized say in the governance of that. And we built in some features to the to the governor Alexios, namely the guardian role, so that there will be like a council that can veto any dangerous governance decisions that get made. And in the future, that'll actually be all staked RSR and all RSR that can be the veto power. And so, the hope is that the idea is that anyone, even though these potentially dangerous things could happen, as a governance attack, we've seen this happen countless times in DeFi where folks didn't, have the foresight to predict the different types of things that could happen. We don't think we have perfect foresight either, and so we kind of gave this backstop veto role, so that if these things do happen, there's a body that can step in and say, no, you can't do that. Right? We're very careful with the powers that this role has, that they can't go make changes themselves. All they can really do is stop bad things. And that's critical. And like it's really interesting. A bit of an aside, but people talk about like, how do I get into crypto? And it's like, go study governance, go study sociology, and different like government structures, because that is like one of the big things that needs to be figured out in the DeFi world, is how do we properly separate powers and balance powers in different groups of folks, so that decisions can get made in a way that's better for all the different constituents, and doesn't just favor some folks. And there's I won't go too deep into token voting and like the bad parts about it, but yeah, there have been many issues of it, and so that's why we added some like very specific nuanced things to the governor to prevent things like you're exactly talking about.
Is that similar to there was like a governance tree that I think Nevin showed during this presentation? Um, is that more similar to that? Because I thought it made a lot more sense than just like straight token voting, and the one vote gets put to everybody that owns a token or is staking, and it can be a less efficient process. I also think, well, let's just, you basically already said that. So yeah, let's talk about this though. Do you think that it's like wise to encourage people to be more involved in governance? Do you think that it can make like the system overall less efficient, or there are ways to break it down so that it can be more efficient for people to be involved, but just not like not all the decisions need to go to everybody? Um,
It's really interesting, and I think you might be alluding to the inefficiency of the MakerDAO system, that all different types of things going on there. But yeah, so high level, I think that getting products off the ground, it's very important to not necessarily have everyone involved. Um, like when you're building and launching products, you need to move quickly, make decisions, have like certain people accountable for certain parts of those decisions, etc. I think that once you get to the maintenance and safety mode, that's where it becomes really valuable in a product's lifecycle to have more voices in the room, and have more analysis done and more things put forward. And that at the end of the day is like what is happening as DeFi protocols generally move to be more decentralized. Because once they get to that like maintenance phase and aren't necessarily focused on the innovation, then it's like, how do we make sure that this thing stays working and stays safe? And that's where it becomes valuable. But then a bit more nuanced, I do think that there is like a balance of powers. And one of the big challenges of governance is that you need to get people with deep expertise in certain areas to be the ones that are empowered to make certain decisions. Right. And if you think about like our thing in particular, what are governors responsible for? They're really responsible for two major economic things. One is, where does the yield go? What percent of it goes to our token holders? What percent of it goes to RSR stakers? And what percent of it goes to any arbitrary third-party wallets, whether it's like the company wallet or the marketing fund for the folks that have launched this thing, whatever it is. The second thing is, what is the basket of the collateral held in? And those are like, they're simple but big things. that governors need to decide. And at the end of the day, they require like certain skills and expertise in order to make those decisions, and like deep knowledge and understanding of DeFi, finance, etc. And we want to make sure that the folks that have that expertise are empowered to participate in decision making in the right way. And so, over the next year or so, that is definitely something we anticipate spending a lot of time on, is designing and inventing, a next iteration of governance that can maybe be a bit more efficient and safe than current token voting.
Do you think that like delegation is dangerous? Like I've always thought of it as being kind of like this weird, like it's almost kind of like this, it like almost endorses like entropy of the organization, where you have like if you have the thing that controls voting, and then you kind of just give that to somebody else, you're you're effectively saying like, well, I don't need to have like full responsibility. Like this person will take care of it for me, and I don't need to study or think about these things. And then as you multiply that over time, like it can get like the delegation endorses centrality in a way. Obviously, you'll have ebbs and flows, but I don't know. I've always kind of like wanted to encourage people to not delegate and for them to really try to research everything themselves.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's like, all right, well, first of all, I won't pretend to be an expert on this. This is something I intend to study more over the next year. But there's a couple interesting things there. I think that there's like the human nature side of it, which is the reality is that people probably won't study everything themselves,
Yeah.
right? Like people are busy, people have kids, people have jobs, whatever it is, right? Like not everyone has the time, the mental energy, or the capacity to do that kind of thing and make informed decisions. And yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's like, why is there an electoral college, right? Like, that's the same question, right? That like the founders of the U.S. made, or the same decision that the founders of the U.S. made was to have delegates, essentially. Uh, another like kind of interesting parallel is if you look at, and I think this illustrates what you were getting at. If you look at ETFs, the majority of the company voting power for the largest companies in the world is actually held by like BlackRock, right? Because they've got the ETFs, and everyone just passively holds these things and delegates their voting power to BlackRock. And it's become an interesting thing where now BlackRock is like the biggest voter in all these different, not just companies but industries. And it's like I won't pretend to have the answer, but they just have this like massive outsized voting power across like the entirety of capitalism. Right? And it's like it's kind of a crazy thing. And to your point, it actually becomes weirdly centralized. And you can see this, like BlackRock has come out with their own agenda on what they think companies around the world should be doing, and they try to enforce it with their voting power across all these different companies. Like, is their agenda good? Is it bad? I don't know. Is it good that this one group is doing that and is able to influence it? I don't think so. Probably not. And so I think like you're probably right that like this lead toward centralization of decision making is probably bad, and we probably there needs to be some kind of ways to address that. And so to actually answer your question, is delegation bad? I don't know the answer to that explicitly. I think there's trade-offs. But I think that you're right that it can tend to centralization. All right, a kind of funny thing about delegation uh, is that there's an interesting aspect. A lot of the delegates actually are like university groups. And I actually think this is like pretty interesting because I think that
Yeah, I remember this example. I think you're going for.
Yeah. I think it's pretty interesting because there's it's actually an interesting group of folks of people that are like smart and hungry and actually have the time to do the research that you were saying, like do the research yourself. There's like an interesting connection there between the university students who actually have the time and might have the expertise and have the incentive to learn and make good decisions and essentially like use it as a resume booster to get experience in real life, right? It's kind of an interesting thing. I think there's some other, I won't go into it, but I do think there's some other uh, interesting aspects of the fact that so many universities blockchain groups get delegations. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting pattern that has emerged across the DeFi world. If you go look at the voters for Compound and Maker, etc.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think delegation is good, but I think there are, yeah, obviously dangers to it. Um, yeah, it's
Dangers
weird.
to
It's
it. I will say though that like we intend to delegate to various groups that we think are good decision makers, right, or think are interesting decision makers, and we need to figure out exactly what the plan is there. But we won't just be voting with our block of RSR. We'll likely delegate to good actors in the space, whether that's other like DeFi founders or good actors that have demonstrated expertise and good decisions in other governance forums.
That's good. I like to hear that. Um, so I'll do one more ask for questions, and then if we don't get any, probably end it here. If that's okay with you.
Yeah,
Flamingo, any questions? See dollar question joined.
Brayden, you're so good at asking the questions that you cover everyone's.
um, thanks. I don't think that's true though. I mean, anyways, yeah, no, I think it's been really good. I really appreciate your time coming on here
Yeah,
and to delve into these things at great length. Um, so
likewise. This has
really,
been everyone's safe and has a is able to continue to be safe in this interesting market environment with all of the bad actors that were exposed over the last week. Yeah,
yeah, try to get your coins into your own custody, guys. I think it's important. Um, with that all being said, I'll let everybody enjoy the rest of their weekend. Thanks again, Thomas, for coming on, and just everybody have fun.
yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Braden.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Later.
Bye.